Welcome back to the Lipoedema Podcast. We're your host, Shell
and Tiana, and today we are having another little chat as co-hosts of the Lipoedema Podcast. Just us, no guests. And we thought we would talk about sort of like a mental health chat, but more about our feelings and our energy through diagnosis and then living lipedema, I suppose.
Yeah.
If you have listened to earlier episodes, in fact, the earliest episodes of the Lipoedema Podcast, Shell and I go through our experience of getting diagnosed. And so what we're just going to do today is we'll put some dates and stuff in there and revise some of that timeline, but also then just put a little bit more emphasis on how we felt at the time.
Yeah.
Because it was a bit of a roller coaster for me, I know.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's something that really needs to be spoken about more is the psychological side and the psychological impact of diagnosis and living with this condition. And I think that's really an area that needs to be spoken about and bringing into the light. Yeah. So that's what today is all about.
Yeah, so we may as well get started. I'd love to hear from you, Shell, first.
Okay.
We have similar timelines between knowing about lipedema and then getting diagnosed. So I'm really interested to hear how you felt when you first thought that might be something that you had.
Yeah, that was crazy. So for me, it was back in October 2022, listening to a podcast, heard the word, heard a brief description about what it felt like for that warrior. And I just knew automatically, that is what I have. So, and that was I was on my way to work. I'd been to the physio. I'd hurt my back. I'd been to the physio and I was on my way to work. And that whole day, that's all I could really think about. I was like, oh my goodness, this makes so much sense. This is me. This is me. And when I finished work that afternoon, I was just diving into social media just to find out as much as I can. And yeah, and I was very lucky. I felt relieved that there was a word. There was a word for what I always thought was a deformity. There was this word that I now knew, I'd extended my vocabulary. And so then I was lucky enough to live on the Gold Coast. I found Lipedema surgical solution and very quickly had a diagnosis. That was October, and by November I had a diagnosis.
Yeah. Do you remember that day that you got diagnosed? Do you specifically remember how you felt? What did you go through during that
I think it was validation, but also overwhelm. That overwhelm, well, what now?
Yeah.
Now I have this word. Now I have this label. What happens next?
Yeah.
Because
jarring.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there wasn't a lot on social media then.
Yeah.
But I know it was only 2-3 years ago, 2 and a bit. But I guess it's like when you're thinking about buying this new car and you see them everywhere.
Totally.
So it's when I first searched, I didn't find much, whereas now it seems to be proliferating everywhere.
Yeah.
Everything I look at. And I think that's all the algorithms, are now sending me more things. But I think there was a validation. I had a label. That was my initial thing. Oh my goodness, there is something.
It's a thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not alone.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah. So I guess when I first heard about the word lipedema and I learned about it through social media, I was so surprised that I had something similar to someone else, that it was somebody else's experience. You sort of oh, wow, there's a person that deals with the same thing. Little did I know that there are many people that deal with this condition. But it felt like I had a sisterhood with this person who I'd never met, and I probably never will meet, but we were connected in some way. So there was an initial excitement or burst of adrenaline that I found this thing. And then when I started looking into it a little bit more, and looking into it was scrolling through social media and looking at keywords and hashtags and everything, I started to get the message that there's nothing you can do about it. Because, a couple of years ago, that was sort of the messaging in like anecdotally, that was the messaging. You know, I hadn't sought a healthcare provider. Like, this was day one sort of thing, you know, the first week that I'd ever heard the word lipedema. And so then, you know, I sort of dealt with a bit of acceptance, like, okay, well, now I can lean in and accept my body for what it is because I have a condition. So that was kind of nice. Initially, it was kind of a nice feeling to feel a bit validated, as you said, and then be able to have a reason why my efforts don't equal the outcomes that I want throughout my whole life. And then I got diagnosed, and I got diagnosed in early February 2023 through Lipedema Surgical Solutions as well on the Gold Coast. And one of the clinicians validated the fact that, yes, indeed, I do have lipedema, and asked whether I wanted to go the surgical route or the conservative management route. And at that stage, I thought surgery was so out of my reach. And I attached a bit of helplessness to that sort of connotation that it probably wouldn't happen for me, that like the surgery was out of the picture. And then we started delving into what conservative management actually looked like. And at that stage, it was the diet, the manual lymphatic drainage, and compression wear. Diet, I didn't feel too bad about because I have a relatively healthy diet. I do like to snack. I have a snack problem probably like around 2 or 3 p.m. The willpower goes, but I genuinely like eating healthy food. So there wasn't much anxiety attached to the diet. The MLD felt like a privilege, like a financial privilege, but it sounded like something that I could get on board with because it sounded very gentle and kind of relaxing. And I was like, all right, that sounds fun. Like, I'm going to try that if I can afford it. But the compression wear, I found I really struggled with it. And there was this big feeling of helplessness that we live in Queensland and it's too hot. I want to wear whatever I want to wear and not, you know, have compression showing. Like, I just had a lot of negative thoughts put toward the compression part. And that was actually the inspiration for me starting to do like outfits of the day, Lipedema outfits of the day on my Instagram, because I wanted to try and flip that in my mind to make it something else. I didn't need to make it like a happy, yay, I love my compression, but I needed to make it this is what it is and this is how I'm making it work. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have worn compression because it felt like a downer, like it was a drag.
Yeah.
Actually. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, it took me a long time to take up compression. Like, I was diagnosed officially in November 2022, and it wasn't until September that I bought a pair of compression.
Yeah.
Like, so I think I was in denial of a lot of stuff until,
It's so hard because, like, I think my personality is very like, let's get in and get things done to a point. Like, I have a ceiling with that stuff. And I feel I was on holidays at the time that I was diagnosed, so my mental space was a little bit more accepting. Probably if I had been diagnosed the year prior, like when you got diagnosed and I'd just finished a year of work, and, you know, things that you feel very fatigued at the end of the year, I probably wouldn't have felt the same and it probably would have been closed off. But I was on holidays at the time, so I had a bit of space to try and implement new things. But I started with the off-the-shelf compression. I started with a pair from Amazon, which were totally not right for me because they cut off at the ankle.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so, you know, but it was a lead in.
Yeah.
Like, it was just dipping my feet in. So as much as I'm like, go, I didn't want to be spending $800 on a pair of compression that I didn't really know how to wear them yet. But I guess when I first got diagnosed as well, I needed somewhere to put all my thoughts. I had a lot of thoughts and a lot of emotions, and that's why I set up my Instagram page.
Yeah.
I recognized that not everybody in my world, not all my friends or family want to hear about this condition that I have all the time, but I needed somewhere, an outlet of something. So I set up this page to be like a video diary, or just to house all of that stuff in a nice little package. And if anybody wanted to connect on that level with me, they had an avenue. But anybody that didn't care to know about it could disengage and it wouldn't flood their feed. And that really helped me because I get overwhelmed by my own thoughts. Like I'm one of those people that drives myself nuts with what's going on in my head. And so it's given me an outlet. And I've been pretty quiet on there lately, but we'll get into why later. But it really gave me a space where I could put everything, whatever I wanted at the time.
Turn it into creative energy instead of that nervous or that all those thoughts and negative stuff in your head. You could then get put into something creative and
And even if you're in a negative space, like it's somewhere to put it.
Yeah.
Like you can speak it out, you can let it out, and there's that release of letting it out of your body.
Yeah.
And putting it somewhere else, leaving it in the, me and my lipedema, leaving it there.
Yeah.
So it's not within me and festering.
Yeah. Yeah. Let it out. Let it out.
That's good to set up your social media. Okay.
Mine was just my same one. I didn't really change it. It was just what I already had. And I started sharing. And then I sort of stopped sharing. So I use Instagram for my lipedema stuff. And then I use Facebook for my family, friends stuff. So that's how I was doing it anyway, because I saw Instagram as a bit more engaging with people in the community, whereas Facebook is more just, family, friends, work colleagues. So that's sort of how, I don't know if that's my old school brain, but that's sort of how I saw it. But we're going back to diagnosis. So when I got diagnosed, I went from this validation, that's what's wrong. Now I have this label. And then I went in to physically see the doctors at Lipedema Surgical Solution. I had bubble tests and I had all the scans on my legs to check my vein health. And that was just completely overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like so much. And I wasn't a candidate for surgery because my legs were so fibrotic. And then I had a hole in my heart and then my veins needed work. And so I walked out of there with this wad of paperwork and quotes on all this stuff I had to have done. And so I filed that away for like 12 months.
Yeah.
I just couldn't, I sort of buried my head in the sand. I was like, first I was like, yay, I know what's wrong. And now I'm like, but it comes with this whole bucket of shit.
It comes with 3 other things that are wrong before that thing can be addressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was really, that was overwhelming. So that was really hard.
So you took a good 12 months to sort of like, I suppose, get that straight in your head.
Yeah, to go back through the paperwork and go, okay, so what does this mean? And so then I went and got another opinion on my veins, and I had all my veins done by a vascular surgeon. And then I got out the MRI referral, and it was out of date by this stage. But they said, no, that's fine, still come in. So I had the MRI, which was clear, which was good. So the MRI, for those who don't know, because I have a hole in my heart, there's a chance that I could have had mini stroke. I know there's a couple of people who have had that, but mine came back clear. So the hole in my heart, whether it's not big enough to cause any damage or whether I just haven't had an event that has made it happen. So yeah, my MRI was clear. So that was really good. So that was a relief, because then I sort of filed away the doing anything about that hole as well. So I'm like, well, it's not causing damage. Let's just file that away. You don't need that right now.
I reckon the hole in the heart situation for me would have been more overwhelming than the lipedema diagnosis, because the heart is like the thing that keeps you alive. So to have something go wrong with this organ that's like life or death, I think I would be way more overwhelmed with that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
Was that your experience? Or?
Maybe that's why I just filed everything away. I'm like, no, you can't deal with that right now.
Yeah.
And my poor mum, when I told my mum, she's like, what did I do to you? Like, I didn't grow you properly. I was like, but then, and then the MRI also found that I've got 2 cysts on my optic nerve. So then my mum's like, oh, was that me as well?
It was
like,
time.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right. But yeah, so that was really overwhelming. And that, I don't think I really did anything for my lipedema for that first, probably August. Well, August we started the podcast. So I was doing like that creative outlet. I'm like, oh my goodness, I've got to find more people like us. We've got to do something for everybody. We've got to be there. We've got to do something, which is
what can we do for others? Not what can I do for myself?
my love language is acts of service.
Really?
If you hadn't figured that out. So yeah, but it was only when we started the podcast that I went, okay, so I started wearing compression and then I started having MLD but that was all, like it took a good 12 months before I started
Doing
anything.
And from talking to a lot of our warriors, you're not alone in that experience. Like a lot of people find it so overwhelming that they file it away until they're in a space where that they can pick it back up again. Because it is thinking that you have to do all these things. And in my brain, the message was the progression is inevitable. And that's not correct. Like the more we delve into speaking to warriors on the podcast and speaking to professionals on the podcast, the more we see that it's not inevitable. And we do have a certain amount of control. There's definitely like genetic and, trauma and stuff that get involved where people don't have control over their progression, but there is a certain amount of control that we do have. It's just about whether we have the right resourcing, not just physically, but emotionally to be able to handle that and take that on board. And I think that's incremental. So for me, it was like my diet, knowing about how diet interplays with inflammation and pain. I noticed more how, if I went to a birthday and had some birthday cake, like, well, that's what that pain is, that's what that aching is at nighttime with my legs. Yep, okay, log that away. And I'm not going to say no to birthday cake. It's one of my favorite things in the whole world. I'm sorry to anybody who is really diligent with their diet. I'm, to a point, pretty good with my diet, but I do love chocolate and I do love cake, and I'm not going to apologize for it.
Still gotta live.
Still gotta live. And in fact, we had a conversation, our previous episode, I'm not sure whether it will have gone live, but a specialist that, and she also has lipedema, and she was saying how, she's very diligent all the time, no matter what. And I was like, that's so amazing that they can do that. And I couldn't identify with that aspect because I do have to have some freedom. Otherwise, I would just binge out of control. I think that I need to have some freedom. I can't.
It's that you can't have that. Like, I'm the same. If someone says, no, you can't do that, that's what I want.
Even if I didn't want it at the beginning.
Yeah. If you're told no, that's like, yes, it's like waving a red flag. I'm going to get it.
Yeah, exactly. So what about, like, what are the other conservative things that you sort of grappled with?
I think everything. I tried doing everything, but not well. Like I bought pump, dry brushing, my lymphatic gloves. I tried vibration plate. Like I've got it all.
Yeah.
But I've got it all. Doesn't mean I use it.
So overwhelming. Yeah. Have all these things sitting there. Like, I could do that, but I've got to do that. I've only got 20 minutes. Maybe I can do that. Oh, but it's almost like this freeze because you have so many options.
Decision fatigue.
Totally.
Decision fatigue. And I was only the other day, I said to my daughter, I'm like, oh, well, I go to P3. It opens at 6 a.m, but I wake up at 5. So I've probably got 45 minutes I could go to the gym.
So how it works.
And then I'm like, oh, but wait a minute. I have a vibration plate. I have all these things at home I don't use. I could just wake up, have my cup of coffee, jump on the vibration plate, put my swimmies on and go to the pool. And that sounds doable.
But in the morning you're like, oh, but I could do this. I could do this unless you commit to a plan.
Yeah. So I really do need to have a plan.
Yes. The night before, maybe. Like have the flexibility of doing it the night before. Otherwise, because if I find that if I have a plan and something happens, I really struggle with pivoting that quickly.
Yeah.
And I like the way you talk about the ceiling and the floor in terms of conservative management. My floor is pretty low right now.
Yeah.
So this morning I felt like I was on top of things, but I knew that I had to like have a shower and wash my hair and put on makeup because we're filming all day. So, that takes up a, significant amount of the morning. Thank God my newborn was relatively kind to me, so I got a decent amount of sleep. But the only thing I really did for my lipedema this morning was dry brush before the shower very quickly and wear compression today. And now yesterday it was just compression because I have another factor now dealing with being postpartum and postpartum recovery. So I have more things that I have to do that are probably taking more urgency than my lipedema, like abdominal separation rehabilitation. And like making sure that my nutrition is really good because I'm breastfeeding as well and my supply is really low. So if I don't eat in the morning, and I've got to tell you, eating in the morning is such a drag.
Yeah. That's not something you usually do.
It's not something
you're a
I usually do. I'm a faster. And so I find with my lipedema stuff at the moment, I feel panic because I can't do what I used to be able to do because I'm a bit more time poor and I know that it's temporary, very temporary. In fact, my little one is sleeping really, really well. So I'm starting to get more sleep. But there's certain things that I have to do for breastfeeding and postpartum that are taking precedence that just move my sleeping window in a little bit. And if I want to then support my lipedema, I've really got to get up early to be able to fit that stuff in so that I can then handle the 3 kids situation. So it's really limited and my floor's full and I have a panic about that.
Yeah. Yeah. But at least you've got a floor. You've identified your floor.
Yeah.
So if you can wear your compression.
I can wear my compression because
that can be your floor
to get on.
Yeah.
That should be my floor.
Yeah, that's your floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
What's your floor?
Dry brushing.
Nice.
Yeah.
When do you do that?
Before I hop in the shower. Every morning before I hop in the shower, I got my dry brush just hanging there.
Yeah.
And I used to use like one of those loofah things to wash myself in the shower, but now I've changed to exfoliating gloves. So I do a bit of an exfoliating in the lymph sequence.
Which sort of activates that.
Yeah.
And when you're doing your floor, when you're dry brushing, how are you satisfied with that? After you're like, well, I've ticked that off.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not satisfied.
Okay.
So
do you think it's not active enough?
No, I think that because I have all of it, like I've got the vibration plate, I've got my lymph press, both things I love to do. Love standing on the vibration plate. Really nice when you wake up in the morning. I used to do that. Like as soon as I woke up, it would be like my warm up for my work. To like just warm up and shake out the body.
Yeah.
And the lymph press is so good, like really relaxing at nighttime. But because I'm concentrating on my sleep at the moment, when I use that at night because I'm inflamed, I've been waking up to go to the bathroom a lot. Yeah. I've really got to nail my sleep because I've got a really small window where I can sleep. So I'm not doing that at the moment. So yeah, I'm feeling like I'm just not doing enough yet. It's not satisfying my lipedema needs, but I do in the back of my mind know that it's temporary.
That's right. So it's almost like the whole postpartum thing is an acute.
Totally.
Yeah, an acute illness, acute condition. So it's not long lasting. It's only temporary. So you have to deal with that first and then get back to your chronic.
Yeah.
Is our lipedema.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's also been a constant for me, and this is not just for lipedema, but I see a psychologist.
Yeah.
And I may not be, like I'm quite like any of my mental health concerns, I'm still quite a functioning adult with all the thoughts and feelings and stuff that I have. I find times of overwhelm, but that constant to have someone that I can see whether I, like when I need to. So being on a mental health plan, you feel like you need to rationalize by being unwell to be on a mental health plan, but I've got to really understand your GP. And I'm like, I know that if I have like this constant tap in to a resource, there's a calm associated with that. And when I need them or when I feel like I'm not coping, I tap into that resource. Yeah. And it's subsidized to a point. I still pay, like I'm privileged to be able to pay for a psychologist. And there's a small subsidy that
Through your health
that
plan.
through my
Yeah.
health plan. But knowing that I have that there has been really good for me.
Yeah.
Not just through this diagnosis, although I did tap into them a bit more regularly when I first got diagnosed. And then when I go through periods where I'm flaring up or I just don't feel in control of my body, I tap into them as well. But I also find that talking on this podcast, using my
It's very therapeutic.
very
Yeah.
all sorts.
And there should never be any, I wish we could say that we're going to a therapist as easy as we say, I'm going to see the GP.
Totally.
Because I don't see a therapist. I am a therapist, but I should see a therapist. I don't see a therapist, but when I was seeing a psychologist, she's like, oh, well, you've got all the tools. And she so I guess she wasn't the psychologist for me.
Yeah.
But I have just gone back on antidepressants. So I started back last week. I was a bit fuzzy to start with, a bit doughy in the head, but I'm a lot better this week. And really that I go on those for overwhelm. And I was sharing with Tiana before, I'll share with you now. I had been toying with the idea, and I think I even spoke a couple of weeks ago about toying with it with the whole menopause thing, because menopause is such a neurological condition as much as it is physical. And I was just standing at the stove cooking dinner the other night, and it's like every tab in my head, like if anyone else out there has ADHD, it's like every tab in my head just opened at once, and it was all talking to me at once, and I just froze. And I didn't know how to talk, but I was like, I just needed someone to tap into me. And so I just said to my youngest, I said, can you please come and just put these extra chicken breasts back in the freezer? I don't need them. And that was enough. When she came over, she bagged them up, put them in the freezer. And that was enough for me to just be able to take a breath. And I just kept stirring the dinner. And it was just, it was like not nice. It was scary actually, because I froze, and I don't ask for help, I give help. So it was a lot for me. And I actually looked over at them to see who was more able to help me, so I looked at the couch, who's it going to inconvenience the least to come and help me? And I saw that she didn't have a laptop on her lap or whatever. So she was the one I called on. But it was a bit scary.
Yeah.
It was a bit scary.
Especially when it feels like it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we have, like with our mental health, we have this bucket and it just fills and fills and fills unless we can do things to help us, with the tools that we've got. Sometimes it's not just a tool. Like sometimes the tools aren't enough, especially when you're dealing with a chronic condition. And, we are so much more than our chronic condition. We have a whole life to lead. You've got a busy job. You've got kids and a husband and a house and a mortgage and finances. And like we are a whole person and we ignore. And then it just snaps.
And doing something so simple, so I'm glad it happened when I was at home, and I was, because I was saying before, my son, he's just turned 19, but he's had 2 panic attacks when we've been out. Like one time we were in Thailand, and he couldn't talk. He couldn't explain to us what was going on. He just froze. Then he started vomiting, and he just had this terrible panic attack just because of the lights and the smells and it was just the heat. It was just all too much for him. And he had this massive panic attack. And it was really scary. And so I'm glad I was at home and I could call on the kids to help out.
Yeah, and you followed that up with doing something, to support you.
Yeah.
Because when you need support, you need support. And whatever that may be, whatever modality you use to help support your mental health is the right one, because you feel you need to open up those parts in your brain that are just frozen.
Yeah.
And if you need medication to do that, whatever you need to do that, it's important to tap into that.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you feel more like a level now, because I know medication really does mess with you when you first start taking it or when you get off it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm feeling really good. I'm ready to get back to work and all the things. So I'm glad I took a couple of weeks to get back onto it before the school year starts.
Oh yeah, because timing is everything with those things as well. If you're feeling overwhelmed, especially after the Christmas period, you've got like a finite opportunity to tackle it before you're going into the rest of the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I don't really know how to close this episode,
Neither did I.
but I feel like we're at a point where we can close.
We can.
Probably a disclaimer if anybody is feeling overwhelmed or if they're dealing with really big feelings, especially associated with having a chronic condition. A couple of things that we've suggested within this podcast, like, finding somewhere to put those feelings, whether it be on a social media page, whether you want to write a diary, or having whatever tool you want to use, or tapping into a psychologist, or getting some help from a pharmaceutical with your healthcare professionals. You really got to support yourself, because it's a big deal getting diagnosed with something that's forever. It's a heavy thing.
Yes, it is.
And you have to live your life outside of that as well. You've got a whole life to lead outside of that. So take care of yourselves and do what you need to do to be able to live healthily.
Yeah, thriving, not just surviving. We want to get to that point. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, on that note, see you on the next episode.
Bye. The Lipedema Podcast 2025 is powered by Elegance Lymphatic Care. Lipedema and its symptoms vary from individual to individual. The opinions and advice voiced in this podcast are of a personal nature and used for educational purposes.
Please take away from this podcast what resonates with you, and please see your GP or preferred specialist for diagnosis and healthcare. We are Shelley and Tiana from the Lipoedema Podcast. Until our next episode, bye for now.